Well, good morning and welcome to our State of the Industry. It is Wednesday. So for a few months now, every single Wednesday, we get to spend a little bit of time together. It's one of my favorite sessions of the week because it forces me to take a look at where we are in the market and really just look at the data across our network from Southern Oregon all the way up to the northern tip of our state as well. I just wanted to, I guess, start by just saying I thank everybody for over the last couple of weeks, just really showing up as great leaders within our industries, within our communities. There's been just so much giving back across the network in every single one of our market centers. There's been organized efforts to help clean up towns and help support organizations that are really driving towards some necessary, wanted, and much appreciated change. So I just wanted to start there and thank everybody. We're going to dive right in today. We have quite a bit to cover. We're going to start by looking at some numbers, and then we're going to I'm gonna sort of lay the groundwork for our call today. We are going to talk with two very different business owners in the sense of how they've decided very strategically to build their business, and that's why I brought them on today. Both are incredible business people, and both have actively made very clear decisions and intention around how they would build their business and grow their business, and both are doing it quite different. We have Kimberly Felicic from the Portland metro area, who has really by design grown a very small, lean, highly profitable and productive business as a solo agent with a bit of leverage. And we have Josh Cooley down in Eugene, who runs one of our largest teams in the network, but also wildly productive and wildly profitable. And so we're going to really get an opportunity to see how both operate incredibly well within our Keller Williams ecosystem, as well as our business model. So I'm excited today to be able to see both sides or both types of businesses, so we can understand how we choose the path that fits perhaps our lifestyle, perhaps what we're looking to build or grow, perhaps who we are, what we want to do within the industry. So appreciate both of you being here, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But as we do every single week, let's just take a look at well, where are we? So we're going to first look like we always do, just week over week, and then I'm going to spend the majority of our time here today talking about what happened in the last 30 days versus the previous 30 days. Last week when we were on, and hopefully most of you were on with us, we talked quite a bit about the importance of making sure that we understand kind of where we are, but where we're going. And although we can look week over week, and that gives us a really micro look at, gosh, what is the trend today, right? What is the trend today versus last week? It's really important for us to get big picture as well and look at, well, where were we a month ago versus where are we today? So usually at this time in the season, or this time in the year, right, this second full week of June, we are really seeing listing inventory increase, right? It's that spring selling season. We're headed into the summer. More and more people are sort of finishing up with school and getting homes on the market potentially. But interestingly enough, we saw some decreases in listings taken in Portland, right? Listings taken dropped 12% week over week, as you see that on your screen. Salem dropped 15%. Southern Oregon, that's been tough, right? New listings down there for sure, down about 1%. Eugene and Corvallis saw an increase. We're going to talk a little bit about the standout market of the six that we really look at any, or five really markets that we look at. Corvallis, Albany has probably been one of the more stable markets that we've seen. Definitely tight inventory, but as you look at new listings, and keep in mind, new listings doesn't mean total active inventory or total listings. It just means new that week, right? What new homes came on the market that week. But we're going to see and look at Corvallis a little bit and look at those numbers and see why that market seems to be one of the more stable, if we could use that word. Pendings were up. pendings were up in Portland, in Eugene, in Corvallis. They were down in Salem in Southern Oregon. What you'll notice is those pendings down. As I've talked to quite a few productive agents in the last week in both of those markets, talked to a couple business owners down there as well, non-KW included. The fact is those pendings down is largely just a product of what's available for those buyers to go pending in. So it's strictly, honestly, we are making our own market as real estate agents right now, right? The listings that we bring to the market are definitely selling, and any drop in pending or drop in activity is largely just based on not having the inventory to pend. Every marketplace pended considerably more listings than new ones were replaced. So we've been looking at that as well the last couple of weeks. If you look at Portland, right, 764 new listings hit the market, 919 pendings. It's a big differential, guys. That's a problem over the long term, or it could be a problem over the long term. Eugene, 149 new listings, 188 pending. Salem, 94 listings, 197 pending. Again, you look at that Salem market, pendings are down 16%, but the differential between new listings and pendings is one of the largest gaps. So largely, it's just getting out there and getting those sellers listening or hearing the data such that they recognize the opportunity that they have in our marketplace. Corvallis, and this is the interesting number, probably one of the closest in terms of new listings and pendings, 95 new listings, 107 pendings. And then Southern Oregon, 171 new listings, 215 pendings, and that's just over the last week. So week over week, you'll see some of those numbers, obviously the differential there. Let's look at month over month, guys. This is actually, you'll see the date range there. And again, we'll send this out in our follow-up email, but we pulled this 30 days, right? May 19th to June 15th, right? About 30 days. And then 30 days prior, April 21st to May 18th, that 30 days prior. And it's interesting to see those differences. When you look at the Portland Metro market, inventory month over month was up 6%. Eugene was up, Corvallis considerably up this last 30 days over the previous 30 days. I'll share my thoughts around that in just a minute. Pendings were up across the network, pretty much in every single market, right? Portland, Eugene, Salem, Corvallis. The last 30 days were more active in terms of more pendings than the previous 30 days. The only market that we didn't see that in was Southern Oregon. And again, you look at new listings, 1,352 versus 717. It's the only reason why we saw pendings go down. In fact, we saw a drop in new listings of 47%, a drop in pendings of 15%. So you can imagine, right? Many of you on the call are actually working in that market. That's tough. That's tough. But for those of us that are not working on that market, we look at that and say, well, gosh, that's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable for a market to have sort of fluid movement if we are taking that few listings. Just the inventory isn't there. In Salem, right? If I'm looking at Salem, 379 listings for the month, 862 pendings. Like that's a big differential as well. And you guys are definitely feeling it, right? When you look at that month of new listings versus month of new pendings, you're going to see some tightening in that market. And that's why when you get your market action reports and you look at total availability, we're seeing that get smaller and smaller and smaller, or tighter and tighter and tighter, right? So we're looking at new listings. The active inventory is getting eaten up, right? Because we're seeing more pendings and actives show up new. The stable market you can see in Corvallis is largely because we at least are increasing our inventory. Across the board, interestingly enough, when we look at our pendings, we are actually getting back to pre-COVID, right? Pre-COVID activity. In fact, Portland has already surpassed where we were prior to COVID really showing up in our marketplace in terms of our pending. So given So given a 30-day period, we look at this next 30 days, and there's a big if there, right? The big if is if cases continued to reduce, and news this morning is that it's not happening that way. That's a whole nother conversation. But if it did continue to reduce, well, gosh, we'd probably go back to an incredibly normal marketplace, because we're already trending that way with some early reductions in late May, early June. Now we're beginning to see that change again as you've watched the news, with reported cases and new cases. So that absolutely has the potential, and we'll probably talk about that next week. That absolutely has the potential to sort of push our market into another dip potentially in terms of activity, if we see some cases showing back up and tightening up of activity, even governmentally. So just wanted to share that it's really important for us to look at not just week over week, but month over month, where our market is going. Leslie, if there are any questions along the way, just sort of jump in and interrupt me, because I'm not watching that chat box. Cool.
No questions so far. Some
right.
Fun, but no questions.
Okay, well, that's expected. I mean, most people are chatting and not listening to me anyway, so we're good. All right, guys. So again, we'll get these graphs out. We'll get the week over week as we've always done, and then we're going to send this month over month, so you can take a look at that. Just another quick sort of big picture look as you look at our marketplace and you look at price changes month over month. What do you see? Number of price chases down in Portland, down in Eugene, down in Salem, down in Corvallis, down in Southern Oregon, and week over week, we've seen some differentials, right? We've seen some increases, some decreases. And that's why when we look collectively over the month, we can definitely see, right? If someone's asking us, hey, well, what is going on in the market, it continues to tighten. Those price changes are happening less and less, because motivation of sellers, well, gosh, they don't need to do anything. We're back in multiple offer situations. I know many of the offices are going to be beginning to roll out some conversations of how do we win in multiple offices, or multiple offer situations as well. That's not a bad conversation to have. In fact, we're going to be reaching out to some leadership in each office as well to try to pull those agents that maybe have been in multiple offer situations and have won. So if that's you, even just reach out to Leslie or me, let us know, because we'd love to put together a panel and some education around how do we continue to do that, because that market's going to be here based on our inventory levels for some time. So get used to it. Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna move into our conversation with a couple of our just incredible agents within our network. And it's interesting. Just as an aside, we've been doing these every single week, and there's no lack of phenomenal talent to have conversations with in our network. And it's often that an office or a network of offices has to go outside of the network to talk to the level of talent that we get to talk to on a weekly basis. So I just am honored and humbled to have each of the people that we've brought on, and many that we are looking to bring on in the near future for us to be able to talk to. One of which is Kimberly Felicic.
Yeah.
So welcome, Kimberly. We appreciate you being on with us. Maybe we can start by just telling us kind of a little bit about yourself, time in the business, how you got into the business, and then we're going to get real specific about what your business looks like today as well. Cool?
All right. So we're going to tell everybody how old I am then, right?
Mm.
So I have been in the business since 1997.
I graduated that year. That's awesome.
Thanks, Chris. Now I really feel old here.
Graduated high school. I'm just kidding.
I went into this right out of high school.
Okay, good. We're the same.
Exactly. So prior to coming into real estate full time, I was a builder developer. And so I made that switch to the real estate side, which I found I enjoyed much more than the building side of it.
Okay. So is real estate your one and only career then? I mean, were you joking about getting into it right after high school, or no, you did, right?
No, well, I started building at 28, so I was a little older than right out of high school. But
Okay.
no, real estate is not. I am all things real estate. So I also own rental properties. I also own a property management company, and I own a hotel in New York.
Yeah.
So
Which
anything real estate.
we're going to get to that because one of the things that you and I had talked about is how, although from the outside, people might say, well, gosh, that's a lot, Kimberly. Like you seem to be going in multiple directions. What is very, very clear to me is you have a very clear true north. Your true north is real estate and building wealth with real estate and building your life around real estate. But there are multiple aspects of that you do. So just as a quick sort of update on where we are, because you're going through right COVID as
You know,
much as there you go, as much as everybody is. Um, you have closed and pended year to date about 25 million in real estate. You have 10 currently in escrow. Um, but what's interesting is you made a very specific and strategic decision at sort of end of last year, beginning of this year, to make some adjustments on how you were running your business. Talk me through that.
so yeah, so I'd had a small team, and then my buyer's agent decided to go out on her own. And so at that point, I had to really stop and think, do I really want to continue to grow my business and bring people onto my team, or do I maybe take a step back and start looking at just being a solo agent and being more productive in that sense? And I decided at that point that was the direction I was going to go. I was going to stay as a solo agent and just continue to build my business from there.
Got it.
And then in February, right before COVID, my assistant husband was transferring to Arizona. So in a matter of weeks, it was a very quick move for them. I also lost my assistant, and then
Okay.
I was scrambling to hire an assistant, which I in turn decided to actually source out.
So let's I'm going to take a step back. There's two things, and I'm going to reframe if you will allow me to what you said, because you said that when the buyer's agent left, went out on her own, incredible businesswoman, by the way,
Mhm.
and right, we all become who we are based on the people that we're surrounded with along the way. So great job, right? Providing that base for someone to be able to launch. You said you made a decision of, do I want to grow my business or not? And I would argue, right, knowing you, you're a humble human being, but I would argue that that was not the decision you had to make, because you've actually continued to grow your business. It was, do I want to grow while leading people, right? Not grow the business. And then the second thing you said is, or just be a solo agent. And I am 100% focused on removing the word just in our language. Now, you come from running a team of people, and so this is a different type of business for you. But you and I have looked, and I don't know if you're open to me sharing this, but I'm just going to share it. But you will run probably the most profitable business that you've run in real estate sales this year, potentially in your career. Is that fair?
That is very fair.
Okay. So I just want to say that because I don't want you to minimize what you're doing or the decisions you made. So first, it started out circumstantially, right? Sometimes in business, things just happen to us. Like, did you plan on a buyer's agent going out on their own? Probably not. Did you plan on your ops person husband taking a job and then needing to move very, very quickly based on where we were? Probably not. But then COVID hits, and for the first week or two, what did you decide to do?
For the first week or two, I kind of sat on the couch and was like, "Oh my God, are we back in another 2008?" So there was a lot of, I have to say, sitting back, self-reflecting, and kind of just trying to decide, what am I going to do? Where are we going? And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, okay, people are stressing. I'm stressing. What can I do? And at that point, I decided to get off the couch and get back to work.
Okay. So we're gonna talk about what that meant. But I think that probably was a gift for you. Patrick Lencioni says, "Never waste a good crisis." And although you may have felt like, "Gosh, did I just waste 2 weeks?" Those 2 weeks for you were a lot of really thinking about where you were, how you had decided to begin building your business again in 2020, and then all of a sudden the world shifted as well. So what did you begin to do?
The first thing I started doing was just reaching out to my database. I actually started with the last closes I had, and I started working that backwards. And it was just a quick phone call. Hey, how are you doing? This is a crazy world. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Okay, so if I'm taking notes, I think that was highly strategic because your last closes are the freshest. They expect to hear from you, even if you weren't expecting to call them, and it's harder to call the people that we haven't called for months potentially. So you just said, "Well, let me start here and work my way backwards." What happened as you started making those calls?
It it was crazy because all of a sudden, within it felt like a matter of minutes, days, that my business just catapulted again. And I went from being somewhat slow because when COVID first started, I, in a matter of 2 days, I had $1.6 million that fell out of contract. And then all of a sudden now I'm catapulting to crazy busy again.
Yeah. So let's talk about where that business came from in just a minute. But again, laying the table, you were used to having help on the showing side, right? On the sales side leverage, which also means on your profit and loss statement, your business statement, you had a cost of sale because as your buyer's agent or your other agents close deals, they also earned commission. You on this side of the table, on this side of the P&L, you also used to have a director of operations. And so every single week, you wrote checks out to them. Now, you still have leverage. What does your current leverage look like today?
So currently today, I have hired a transaction coordinator, and she handles everything from my transactions from the moment they go into escrow. She has a client care follow up, and then have also hired that same person for the listing side of it. So once I take a listing, they get it into RMLS, they do all my flyers, they push it out.
So what I love about that, now she's not on salary, is she? It is
Nope.
a third party transaction coordinator.
Yes.
Do you feel, and it's okay, right? Oh, like yes or no. Do you feel like you've lost leverage that you used to have?
Not in that sense. No, actually, I think I've gained leverage.
And do you believe that that's because her systems are so good and maybe on the transaction sides, they're better than yours were even prior to?
Oh, 1,000%.
Awesome. I love that. So you've hired leverage. Vern Harnish in Scaling Up, the book Scaling Up, we talked about that, would say, well, that's a brilliant way to build a business, in that you didn't increase your fixed cost in terms of salaries, but you still have the leverage to be able to scale and grow your business. Interestingly enough, your production isn't down, it's up, even though you have less leverage. And the reason why you're more profitable is because with that leverage, and what do you find yourself doing more of?
Talking with clients.
Which is
So sorry.
who they're clearly calling you this morning, which is the dollar productive activity, right? So you are still, your day to day consists of calling the database, and right, showing property. We're going to talk about how you do that on your own with that much business. But tell us where the majority of the 25 million closed and pended this year alone has come from.
It is almost exclusively all come from past clients or referrals from my past clients.
Okay. Historically, if we look back at your business, you've had really two sources of business: past clients, right, and database, and
Builders.
okay, builders. And those builders turned into really sort of a streamlined open house
Yes,
Is that right?
correct.
Would you say that? Yeah. Now, based on your current business setup, can you do as many open houses as you used to? Are you doing the open houses or no?
I am actually not doing any open houses. I'm not even doing virtual open houses.
And here's why I wanted people to hear that is because based on the time that you have today, you can't, right? Based on the time that you have today and how you've designed your business, you have designed and chosen to have a database referral only business, right? There's no new activity looking for new business other than, interestingly enough, the new business that you're getting by diving into that database. So you shared that as you made those calls, right? Like you found business there.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
But because we all of a sudden started looking, I was putting my mindset into that. That became my one thing. And it had probably, as you even said, it had probably always been there. I just, for the couple weeks prior to, wasn't looking at it. And once I changed my mindset and it became my one thing, it it just catapulted.
Yeah, we were having a conversation about the fact that I believe that that business was actually always there, right? Those sellers were there, those buyers were there, and the only reason why you weren't getting them is because your focus wasn't on that. It's like when you buy the red car and then all you see is the red car. The red cars were always there, you just noticed it. So your activity of calling the database and deciding after 2 weeks of sitting, and I know that it literally wasn't 2 weeks of sitting on the couch, but after 2 weeks of wondering, what am I going to do right now? What do I want to do right now? Is this 2008 all over again? Like, cause you've been through that, you decided, no, I'm going to run my database playbook. I am going to build my business off the database. And as you did that, guess what? Those stones that were there, you just flipped them over because you were thinking differently, you were acting differently. Last night I was thinking about your business because I'm highly impressed, and I went back into a book to to remember where that really came from or this thought was shared, and Neil Parishka wrote a book called The Happiness Equation, and I would we had this conversation of your business is by design and because it was about the time that you wanted to spend in the real estate sales business. But in the happiness equation, Neil says that we think that if we have great running shoes, then that would lead us to training for a marathon. And we think if we have this great idea, then that will cause us to write the book. When in reality, it happens the other way. We start training for the marathon and then we say, gosh, I'm going to go get really great running shoes. Or we start writing and then the book shows up with a great idea. Like action leads to motivation. Motivation doesn't lead to action. So I would argue that you may have not been ridiculously, incredibly motivated to go out and build this business again, but you got yourself an activity and then motivation showed up because you realized how many people literally needed your help and wanted your help out of your database. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%.
And I think that it's important for us to hear that you are building a business by choice. You looked at time. Now, I would also argue if you wanted to, you could go out tomorrow and hire multiple buyer's agents because the amount of business that is waiting in your database is probably more than you can handle. And you've chosen, you'll close 50, you will close. What do you think you'll close this year in terms of business?
I'll probably close 50 transactions.
That's incredible, right? That is incredible. And interestingly enough, will help you build the life you wish to build. Now, you also, you bought a hotel, began to remodel that hotel. Why did you do that?
Um, it was an opportunity that came along. It was exciting. It was in the real estate field, which I like, and it was something different. And it was a great. It was, it was one of those. It was just a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think that what that allows us to see is when you build your schedule and you control your schedule when an opportunity shows up, and I believe it's true north, right? Because it's not a rabbit or a distract. We have to make sure it's not a rabbit or a distraction, but it's true north for you to build wealth through real estate, invest in real estate, and it's a bit of a passion project. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. that you were able to take that opportunity. Now you also run a property management company, is that right?
Correct.
What does that look like?
So right now we have about 130 doors, and I have a team that runs that. So I don't do the day-to-day operations of that because I am focused on my real estate. But my real estate has allowed me to have that other leg of business. And so we have a team, we have an office that does the whole Willamette Valley, and then we have an office here in Portland that has the team that runs that. And I go to our Tuesday meetings to talk with the team and work with, I do a lot of the sales side. So if agents need it, they know I'm a resource and we'll just turn them over to the team.
Yeah. What I what will probably what I'd love to do is there's a lot of people that are interested in, well, how do you do that? How does that run? Kimberly, I would just give you a lot of credit for doing it the right way. That's not an easy business to get off the ground. There's a lot of regulation and rules, even within the brokerage, while maintaining a broker's license and keeping that right from a separate from a highly litigious field of property management. Like that is a whole nother world. Would you agree?
Oh, it is such a different world. And it was a almost 2 years in the making of actually putting the business together and getting the team and together to run it properly.
Yeah.
And I use the word properly because so many people try to do it and don't do it properly and can really bite you.
And that's because we either have a few rentals ourselves and we're managing it and we think, well, gosh, I just should do this for other people. And then we take one client that we've had for a long time and a second client that we have a long time and we're kind of doing it on the side. Nobody really knows. And and then you realize that, gosh, if you're going to really put in the time, right, it's putting the time up front to build the systems the right way. Speaking of systems, I just want to talk about one more thing with you. Um, One of the things that we had talked about was the fact that your business hasn't slowed while what you thought was needed for leverage isn't there anymore. Why do you believe? Why do you believe that the business, aside from you getting into activity and really focusing on that database, why have you been able to maintain your production level without the additional leverage that you had prior? Do you
And I
think?
think a lot of it was turning over the transaction and the listing side of it to somebody that is their one thing. You know, when I had an assistant that did it, doing the transactions was definitely not her one thing. She had about 101 things. And, you know, most of us high producers, you know, we come in and we kind of just, pardon the expression, but shit all over everybody. Here's what we need. And then we're out the door. So we were always, I know that I was always distracting my assistant. And so now what I've done is I've taken that off my plate. Emily, who handles it, it's her one thing, couldn't do it better than any assistant that I've had in the past. And it's allowed me to really, like, when I'm working with buyers, I actually look at all the listings and I typically pare it down to about 5 listings. And I would say about 80% of the time will write an offer on those 5 listings. And now with the COVID and everything, they've driven by them. They've taken a virtual tour. We've talked about it. We Google walk the streets. So by the time we walk through the door, it's just verifying what we thought was actually there.
Yeah. Couple questions, maybe one question, one statement. Your database, there's a question by someone. Do you roughly have an idea of how many people are in that database that,
And
right, either are past clients or that you're going to reach out to?
I currently have about 2,500 in my database.
Okay, awesome. So Michelet, 2,500 in the database. Now, let's go back to what you just said. You have 10 in escrow. That's a lot for even someone with leverage.
Mhm.
What stood out to me is when you decided to build the business this way, there was no way you could be this productive if you weren't streamlined and systematized with your consultations, with your listing like presentations, with how you show homes. But see, limits and boundaries and guardrails on our time forces us to make sure that everything we do is a system. And right, the average number of homes showed per buyer for your buyers this year has been 5, right? Just over 5 point something. So that in it of itself, prior to, maybe it was 11, maybe it was 12, maybe it was 14, and maybe someone else was doing that. And so we don't recognize how inefficient our business is when there are other people.
And kind of back up a little bit. One of the other interesting things that has happened during this last couple of weeks is how many of my deals I've done off market too. I've had 2 off market deals that I've done. I'm actually working on a third right now, and have double ended several just because of connecting. And those have mostly been investment properties, but being able to connect it.
Yeah, I love that. Um, one last question. As you think about where you were and what you're building today, any advice for maybe the individual agent that looks around and sees big teams and thinks that's the only way to be successful?
Yeah, because I've definitely had that mindset. And there are times still that I have to step back and say, because the competitive side of me gets out there and I want to be that, mega agent, top producer, have this huge team. And then I have to step back and go, wait a minute, I've built a plan. I've sat down and I've strategically put a plan together, and I have to stick to that plan. And so I would much rather build a profitable company rather than a big one.
Yeah.
And so just leverage. And I think I'm serving my clients better now with my leverage that I have. I think it's because it's the one thing. I mean, they're all getting the same thing. They're all getting their Friday updates. They're all getting their Monday calls from me because now I have the time. I'm not so distracted doing other things. It's made me to systematize myself too, where I think before I relied so much on my assistant when I would come in that I didn't have to be systematized. And so now I've had to take a step back and actually systematize myself, which is good for me.
What's interesting is you're self-proclaimed not the techie human, and yet you're one of our early adopters of command and moved your entire business into command. And I truly believe if you had not done that, what you're doing today would be more difficult because you're all in, right? You're like, all of your clients are there, all your opportunities are there. Last week we had David Voorhees on, and honestly, that's just review for you because you've been doing it. Now that allows you to sort of grow that sequentially as new features get open. We talked yesterday about getting your people now on plans, so it's not just activity reminders, but now plans are in place. You're going to be able to grow that as large or as tight as you wish to because the system is there and you chose to pull back and get ridiculously profitable. Gary Keller gave me some advice early on, maybe 6 years ago. He said, you know what? Your profitability will be your competitive weapon, right? Because my focus was always, I'm going to run a profitable business, right? Size to me is irrelevant. Like it'll grow organically as it needs to. So it's not to say that you'll never add more leverage, right? This isn't, well, Kimberly's the poster for the individual agent. It's just, this is how you've chosen to run your business right now. Your business can now grow organically as you let it or don't let it, but your systems are in place, your database is in command, like you've been able to cut expenses because you moved over to command and be more profitable. Like it's just really cool for me to see you also live experientially and own multiple businesses while not having hair on fire real estate sales business causing stress in your world. And that makes me happy.
And I have to say command, though it was frustrating in the beginning, and still there's little things, but it's so easy. I mean, I had top producer for 20 years, and there was so much of top producer that I never even used or touched. And now I feel like there's every bit of command that I'm using where I hadn't been, and it's so easy to use once you get in there.
Yeah, I love it. Kimberly, thank you so much. This was incredibly valuable for me. You're right, as a business owner, really learning how to set things up by design, but also a really, really important segment of our agent population to recognize that you can grow with leverage, third-party leverage. It's a safe way to grow. It's a profitable way to grow. And think about it, an individual agent, right? You will hit that 50 units, right? Based on where you already are. and run one of probably the most profitable businesses in our network. So I'm proud of you. So thanks for being here and sharing.
Thanks.
All right. So we're gonna switch gears and actually talk to someone that in our network runs actually an awesome team, right? It can be done incredibly well both ways. We're going to have a conversation with Josh Cooley out of Eugene. Josh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being willing to spend some of your very busy Wednesday with the network. Most of the network knows you. You've been around the network, and you've been in real estate how long, Josh?
12 years.
Gosh, 12 years. 12 years. And where did you start? Did you start what company did you start at? Was it Always?
Yep.
Always KW. Awesome.
Yeah.
So 12 years. What does your team look like right now?
Team right now is director of ops, marketing, 5 sales, working on a couple more hires right now in that world. And then we've been utilizing VAs more.
Okay, awesome.
Get used to that idea.
So 5 agents, 2 operational, some virtual leverage as well. What I find interesting is, right, you're obviously the leader of the team, but you also run a really great coaching, right? You're a coach as well, and a phenomenal coach, by the way. You have 30 pending right now, and what I find most interesting, this is where we're going to spend most of our time today, is you guys, just like, right, most businesses, end of last year, sat down, set some goals for 2020. And what I find interesting is, well, you're ahead. You're ahead of goal, right? You're on track to close 175 homes in Lane County. What I want to do is kind of unpackage, why are you ahead or on track for 175? When so many are readjusting sort of those goals because of circumstance. What has led your organization to stay on track?
Well, no, I'll quote you from quoting someone else just a little bit ago is, don't waste a good, what is it?
Crisis.
Crisis.
Yeah.
Day 2 into this pandemic is what it was. It was a Thursday, and I believe it was March 12th. I just came in the office and said, everyone go home. And then the next week it became a lot more real. But I didn't sleep very well those first 2 nights. Into this going, okay, psychology says that if we're locked up for 90 days, 60, 90 days, habits are going to change. There's going to be a lot of unknown, and it was all unknown. And so I've had this in front of the computer the whole time to slow down. That second night, I wrote down 3 things: slow down, money matters, and grow or stabilize. And that's for coaching, but first our team, take care of home. I thought, let's just slow down. I don't want to burn out. I don't want the team to burn out. If we're all working from home and doing things differently than we've ever done, there's the bandwidth we've got to bring that in. So money matters. We took care of all of our current pendings. It's like, oh, great. If we lose all of our pendings, that's a bad deal. So we checked in on our money, looked at our expenses, and then made a decision. Do we want to grow, or are we in a place where we need to stabilize our business and go back and work on systems with, if we have extra time?
Yeah.
I took that to the team, Chris. Said, do we want to grow, or do we need to fix some stuff? And everyone said, you know what? Let's stick together. Let's do this. So there you go.
So you made a choice, right? Is this a time for us to pull back, look at systems, take this time, and readjust or work on foundation? Or do we truly believe that is done and it is good enough for us to grow on top of? The group comes together and says grow. Now you have this almost model, like I wrote it down, and I think it's a really smart way to look at business, but it was this idea of 50-50. Like you wanted you pushed for 50-50. In what way? What does 50-50 mean to you, for us to take some notes around?
Sure. Little background on that. in coaching, having an opportunity to work with director of operations, and not just the sales agent. Sales can be kind of spastic, and we want to hire someone to come clean up the mess and direct the team. And it's like, how do you explain to a director of operations, maybe coming from a different industry, what the true north is? Like, how do you know you're winning if you're running a company, running a real estate company? And it's like, well, if you're always going toward 50-50 buyer, 50% buyers, 50% listings, and 50% Mets, and 50% haven't Mets, Chris, you've always got a lever to pull or a way to go, okay, we've done 75% of our business from our database and only 25% from haven't Mets. Let's focus on activities that'll bring us more haven't Mets, because once you take the listing and once you're in a real estate transaction, you're organically doing things that should be creating and bringing more business to you. So it's more of a management or leadership or director of ops concept of how do we rally the troops? What activities are we going to do? Do we need to do more open houses, or do we need to do a client event? But it gives purpose with all of the different things that you can do. There's just so many, and without getting distracted, how do we direct and focus the team's vision? So if you're always focusing on 50-50, it just eliminates a lot of the noise and gives you a true north.
So I just want to repeat that, because actually I wrote it down. I sent it to my team because I love that model, 50-50. And there's 4 parts of that. So go through those 4 parts again.
Listings and buyers.
Yep.
And then Mets and haven't Mets.
Yep.
So think about, you take a listing, you can circle prospect, door knock. And for a director of ops, that's who they're hiring for. So if you don't have someone that's talented in that area and wants to do it, that's your next hire. You're looking for those opportunities to grow the organization, right? But you take a listing, you can door knock, you can do an open house, circle prospect, which is going to work the haven't Mets. You can also send a card to your database saying you listed another home. It just directs the activities, and you know where you need to lean.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes we hear 50-50 and we immediately think, okay, buyer seller business, that makes perfect sense, right? If I take a seller, it should get me a buyer. Like organically, if I'm executing properly, I should get to 50-50. But I also like you tracking and having this conversation amongst your business. Hey, let's look at our source of business. Your goal is to have 50% from the database because you met them already, and 50% from people that you have never met before, which one is systems based and one is activity based. I don't remember where this came from, so I can't give credit to the right source, but in business, it might be Andy Stanley, but in business, there's a few different failures. There's 4 different types of failures that we can experience. I'll just mention 2 of them. It's a failure of strategy and a failure of execution. Interestingly enough, like that 50-50 model is on the one side, on that ops side, which you do so well and you coach so well too. It's strategy, right? Operationally, systems, it's like here's our strategy, but the other failure is the activity. Like if 25%, truly 25% of that 50-50 model is new Mets, that's activity and execution. Yes. Around the system. And I think that your business has grown very, very systematically, by the way. It's grown because you do not have a failure of strategy and you don't have a failure of execution.
Well, I'm glad it looks like that.
Well, from the outside looking in, right? But I mean, right, we always have failures and breakdowns and all those things, but when you're focused on it, which you are, and pushing on it and reminding people around it, then you're constantly making it better. I want to go back to something that you said, because you said you looked at, gosh, if this lasts 60 to 90 days, which let's wake up and realize it has, that's just long enough for us to develop new habits.
Yeah.
How big of a deal has that been for your team in now looking back and being on goal?
Let me tell kind of a funny around this, because I think it proves a great point. We're 2 weeks into this, and we started doing Zoom calls twice a day.
Okay.
Keep in mind, we did a daily huddle every day as a team before, and for the last 3 years, there's always bumping heads about this morning huddle. It's too early. There's no value in it, and we didn't have an agenda. It's like, guys, we're together at one point to communicate a new listing, a new buyer, a new need. I'm slammed. I need help. Like, there's a purpose. We were there as a team to communicate, which, bumping heads, whatever. But we were easily able to go on Zoom and do that because we'd already practiced it for so long. Like, the Zoom meetings weren't that weird to us. And we even, I labeled it. I'm like, isn't this great that we struggled through all those early morning meetings? Because this is normal. Like, we're used to this, right? There's some normal. And we wanted to grab onto anything that was the same, again, to protect that bandwidth. So 2 weeks in, I can just see the body language tanking. Everyone saw it. Just we're mopey. It's dark and crappy outside. So I'm like, you know what? We've got a firecracker of energy. Kate Willett on our team just turned 21 last week. As a matter of fact, I'm like, Kate, do you know any jokes? So every day in the morning and in the afternoon meeting, she would tell us a joke, and they were corny, man, just silly. Like, what do you do if you get attacked by a group of clowns?
I'm worried to answer.
You go for the juggler. So we just said all of these corny jokes. Kate just rocked it every single day. And so now, habits, 90 days later, Kate will say something and the team just stops. Like, is this a joke? Like, we're programmed to think Kate's telling us a joke. And so I pointed that out just to make fun of it, that there are a lot of new habits I think that people have gained, and I hope they're the right habits, right? I hope we didn't let ourselves off the hook and not do the job and expect to just pick it back up.
How have you guys been able to maintain focus then?
The morning, the 9 o'clock meeting was, what are you going to do today? Where are we at on goal? Who's winning? Who needs help? And then the afternoon was more of a lighthearted, let's defrag, go be with family, and go in that direction. So we focused every morning. I mean, what do we need to do today? And then we'd get on the afternoon and say we did it or we didn't, and go from there.
That's a takeaway for us as we're taking notes in our overall structure as well. If we're running a team and there are people, many of us start the day and we hop on, we do our huddle, we do our stand up. But I think your afternoon, and did you used to do the afternoon, or was that a new habit?
That was a new habit because, honestly, I feel like when we were absolutely locked down, I know it was hard for people to stay focused during the day. And I have a feeling that around noon or 1, we probably started maybe flipping on the TV. And it is what it is. But the conversations were changing. So we just decided, hey, let's hold each other accountable to showing up at the end of the day too. So that was new. Got
it. Okay. As we sort of wrap up, guys, what we want to do is be able to take a step back and say, okay, well, what can I duplicate, right? If here's a team that has gone through this, and we looked at the inventory in Eugene, by the way, like, it is tough. Like, you are in a tough market. You've gone through this, you're ahead of goal. A couple things that stood out to me is we have a model of how to build or grow a business with your 50-50-50-50 model, right? I also recognize that you did look at 60 to 90 days, and you had the possibility of completely blowing a lot of habits that you've worked really hard, right? 12, 13 years in building and growing and sort of establishing. But interestingly enough, you added in some new habits, right? That afternoon meeting that many of us are not doing. I actually think we need to look at what specifically does someone that is being successful do? And if I'm not doing that, we can take a lesson, add that in, because that wrap up is probably just as important as the start to your day as well.
Yeah, taking care of the mind.
Yeah, love it.
Just talking to people was helpful.
Josh, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being willing to jump on and just kind of share just a couple takeaways of specifically what you did and how to run that business and how to continue to grow it and stay on track for goals. One of the best coaches, I truly believe, in our marketplace in the industry, and you've been doing that for years, and you've structured your business such that the business can continue to grow as you continue to grow and develop as a coach as well. So I appreciate who you are and the business that you run.
Thank you, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. All right, Leslie, any final maybe 1 minute wrap up of announcements that you have for us?
Yeah, thanks for all of you guys for sticking with us to the end. For those who stayed, you get to be the first to know our big special announcements that are coming up and our big save the date. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be transitioning our state of the industry starting in July. But I want to make sure that you have this information on your schedule. We are going to return our Masters series also starting in July. So save the date for July 1st for Jeff Woods. And moving forward in July, Chris will be doing his monthly State of the Industry address on the second Wednesday of the month. And the fourth Wednesday of the month will be our Master Series speaker. So Jeff Woods, July 1st, then Chris Suarez will be up next. And then we have Gene Rivers for Lead Generation on July 22nd. Chris will be back on August 12th. And then on August 26th, we are excited to have Lance Loken and Peter Chabris for Listing Domination. Now, where can you find all this information? We are also excited to announce our shared network-wide training and events calendar. I've dropped it in the comments box. You can now log on, thank you to our Agent Services Division, to check out that event schedule at kwtechhelp.com. Click on Network Live Schedule. You will be able to find all of our State of the Industries, upcoming events, as well as any and all trainings, classes, masterminds, etc., that our market centers have chosen to share throughout the network. So that's all I got for us today, Chris.
Awesome. So in July, we're going to move to second and fourth Wednesday, starting out though with Jeff Woods on July 1st. So July will be a little bit different and then getting into our rhythm. But we have Jeff Woods coming up, we have Gene Rivers coming up, and then Lance Loken and Peter. So really excited about some of the guests we have. If you need anything, reach out to Leslie or I. Thanks for being on the call, and absolutely thanks to our guests as well. Their contact information was in the chat. If you need help in Eugene, if you need help in Portland, if you need help in property management even, please reach out, and glad you guys were willing to share with us as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.